material world, and I am a material girl. You know that we are living in a material world, and I am a material girl. Do, 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 do. You know where that is? Because these days you can be a girl and a boy at will. So today I am a chick. Can't you tell by my sexy voice?
Oh.
Sounds like a...
Danielle today, isn't it?
Why not? Shout out to Danielle. You know, Mrs. Picklebear.
Oh, I've never actually met Mrs.
I have once.
I'm sure she must be a lovely lady.
Yes, but I have to...
Picklebear.
No, but I have to shout out Mrs. Rocket Russell because I'm probably going to piss her off today because there's a lot of rabbit holes that she can't get out of. But let me introduce this bullshit. This is Invert the Why, episode Captain's Log, Stardate Log 12.1.4.56. Who knows what we're fucking up to these days? And the USS Invert the Why is orbiting another Class M planet of retrodom and bullshit. This is the only podcast sponsored by its mother and powered by the love of fairy bread. And he's back because he's awesome and he's got some things to say. We've got Rocket Russell back.
One text. That's all it was, wasn't it?
One text. Dun, dun. Dun. And we're not just going to talk about Formula One today. That's the biggest thing. That blows my mind. My mind was blown yesterday when we started.
I just put it out there. I thought, you know what? He hasn't given me a topic other than Formula One. Let's cast the bait out there and see if it takes. And fucking hell,
didn't it take? You know what the story is? Before I reveal the topic, no bullshit. Jason Relaxation, who's also part of this bullshit podcast, but I don't introduce him anymore because we can assume that he's here. Because if he's not here, I'm not here, right? Because you know why?
Because he doesn't know how to turn on the buttons.
I don't know how to do
all the buttons.
He knows how to press the buttons to make this thing work. Other than that, I don't know. I'm just talking to myself, which I do repeatedly.
It's like business as usual.
I talk to myself all the fucking time.
The only problem with that is you always know the answer.
That's right.
Yeah, you only need to worry when you start sort of responding to yourself. Then you're in shit.
I do, and sometimes I argue with myself.
Trouble.
Don't you ever do that? You walk down the street and go, "Fuck, you're an idiot." You know, and you actually talk to yourself.
You know what? I do it for the fun of it.
Yeah, I was going to say that's just Kingswood, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But Jason Relaxation's here. We do have a topic of the show, but before we get to that, reason why I sang that song, "Material Girl" by Madonna. Stranger Things season 3 has started, and one of the songs that was in that, because that's set in the 80s, obviously, was "Material Girl" by Madonna, so it's stuck in my head.
So Microsoft have been hinting about something going on with the Stranger Things universe.
They've tweeted out today something about that.
Yeah, they're tweeting out about the original Windows, which is obviously a 1980s throwback, and Stranger Things. They're going to do something together, so it's going to appear in an episode coming soon.
I'm only up to episode 2 so far of Stranger Things. Have you ever watched it?
I'm sitting here looking at you with a dumbfounded look.
You've never watched it?
I haven't actually watched it.
You got Netflix, right?
Oh, of course I've got Netflix.
Go
home and watch it. No bullshit.
Yeah?
Yeah, seriously. It's
if you
awesome.
haven't seen that, if you haven't seen Black Mirror, they're the two you
Oh,
need to see.
no, you've got to go home and watch it, man.
I've seen a few episodes of Black Mirror that really did my fucking head.
Yeah, Stranger Things will too.
Yeah, shout out to Serious Sam, who can't even take that either. He struggled with Black Mirror.
Oh, look, I was told to watch certain episodes. You had to watch certain episodes to get the feel
there's some
for
episodes you don't watch.
Just
like
start
you
at
skip
the
ahead.
beginning, man.
So there's not a continuation.
No.
So you just watch the ones you're
Well, it
interested
kind
in.
of
We've
is,
watched a
actually.
couple.
It actually is.
Is it?
Yes. Very, very broadly speaking, Black Mirror is a kind of sort of continuation of the universe. And the more you watch it, the more you'll actually get to see that things are interrelated, but they're at different time periods in this sort of parallel.
You see Easter eggs in there.
You see Easter eggs, but it is kind of related. But if you do yourself a favor, I think you'll absolutely love Stranger Things. The first season was great. The second season was great as well. But I'm only up to the second episode of the third season, which just popped on the Netflix a couple of days ago at the time of this recording.
Yes,
you'll love it. It's set in the 80s. It's all the things that we love about the 80s, all rolled into one. It reminds me of the Goonies. It reminds me of Stand By Me.
Truffle Shuffle.
Yeah, Truffle Shuffle.
Truffle Shuffle.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's so cool. And it reminds me of a Stephen King novel come to life on the screen. It's cool. Can't comment on what the third season's like at the moment. So I'm only at the start of it, but I loved it.
I'll have to have a look.
Was that your your iPhone 3G, or was that the the Samsung?
Jason Relaxation's given me a present. This is the iPhone 3G. I think
it's my very first iPhone.
I can't believe how far we've come in terms of smartphones. Look at the small.
Funnily enough,
that's what she said.
It
was fat as.
That's what she said.
No, she didn't.
No, she didn't.
In reality, it's not actually. It feels fat,
but it's not.
It's not actually.
It's just
that
bad
fat.
design.
Look how small it is.
It is.
Yeah. It's like got these.
It's like looking at a picture of Europe plastered over Australia.
You can't imagine doing much stuff with that. Like when you look at the screen size.
But that was revolutionary. That
but look at the size of the bezels on it.
Yeah.
They're massive.
Look at the bezels.
Look at the bezels.
There's my front-facing camera.
No such thing.
Was there not one?
No, there was one.
There wasn't one. No,
So
that came much
selfies
later.
weren't even a thing.
These selfies weren't even.
We've all
thought of.
watched the the Australian provider of internet services ad where we weren't ready for the 4G selfie thing.
No.
So it's a 3G phone, no selfie.
That's it.
So
because we got 4G, we could have selfies.
So there's a really
And because of 5G, we can open our cars.
Oh,
And we
mate.
can-
Fuck that ad shit.
We can get brain tumors.
That's a fucking rabbit hole. This episode, by the way, is rabbit holes.
Oh, it is.
And again, I
massive rabbit holes.
apologise to Mrs. Rocket Russell. Shout out to her because I think I'm going to fuck up Rocket Russell today because I've got a massive rabbit hole. But it's not the one that you and I want to talk about.
Oh.
But just going back to the.
Do you know what's funny about that?
What?
I've had that for.
This is the iPhone.
Yeah,
3G.
I've had that for a very long time. Clearly.
Yeah.
I haven't treated it well.
No, it's
I've had a Samsung for like a couple of months, and I've already cracked the shit out of it. So.
But look at the difference, man. Like, look how small the camera is on the back. It's only like one lens. Right.
The camera array on the back of this thing is almost bigger than that fucking phone.
Yeah. Have you seen the leaked images of the iPhone 11?
Well, there's a reason he.
The big four.
The big four
square.
thing, the square thing. But look at this, man.
There's a reason he quit. That design does not go well.
Terrible. There's a home button
It's
on
going to
it.
be interesting. I'm sort of glad I didn't hold out.
No, it
now.
looks bad, man. There's a physical home button on the iPhone 3G.
There was up until recently.
Yeah, but I can't believe how small it is, and the bezels are really big and chunky.
And I think it's still work. I've probably got a charger somewhere.
it's the old charger too.
I've got one.
30 pin. Ah,
Yeah.
I've got a 30 pin laying around somewhere at home.
Oh, this is
We should charge it up. Yeah.
16 gigabytes internal memory by the looks of it.
Which back then was
always got
massive.
More RAM than that, haven't we?
I do. Yeah.
That's insane. But that's not the topic of the show. Topic of the show, we've got something to discuss here, and this is what's blown my mind. It's rocked my world, and this is why Rocket Russell says, you know what? Unbelievably, we won't talk about F1. Dun, dun.
Dun, dun.
We're going to talk about Bob Lazar, and we're going to talk about the Netflix documentary that has appeared on probably within the last month or two.
Can I throw in an extra in there? We should talk about the podcast with Joe Rogan as well.
Yes, that's what I'm going to throw in as well.
Just talk about
Yes.
the whole Bob
Yeah, the whole Bob Lazar
Yeah.
thing. So I was going to get to that. So Bob Lazar, long story short, he was a guy that came out in 1989 and he went to the media and said, guess what, folks? I used to work at...
S4.
yes, but that was in Area 51. And I worked in part of Area 51 called S4. And he's a guy that is a physicist.
Physicist. Yep.
And he is a propulsion expert. And his job when he went to S4 was to work on
reverse engineering.
Deconstructed or soon to be deconstructed alien aircraft or spaceship, whatever you want to call it, and try and work out its propulsion technology. And when he was there, he claims he saw some really wacky shit. And so he went to the media on this in 1989, some years after he left Area 51 / S4.
89 was the year he was working there, wasn't he?
No, he left.
He left.
He went to what's his name? George Knapp. I think that's his name.
Yeah, George Knapp.
He's the guy
So
that
George Knapp
89,
took a couple of years to investigate and stuff.
So he left, and I think it's. I'm trying to remember why he left. Was it because he was caught with his friends looking at alien spacecraft?
So I think the story there is he actually got busted. He had the flight schedule for these test
and
flights,
they were on
and they went up
Wednesdays.
on the hills on a Wednesday, and
he took his friends there.
and they got a little bit careless. Apparently, they had like a camper van at one point. All lit up
as
as if it wasn't going to get noticed.
He
right?
was the reason that they extended the perimeter.
Correct.
Of Area
He's the
51.
reason they extended it. Yeah.
Well, actually, he was the guy originally that said that there were plans that the US government were going to extend Area 51. Right? He actually broke that story. And a few years later in the 90s, Area 51 actually was expanded. So Bob Lazar is a very...
Mind you, can I just stop you there?
What?
Because the recap and the summary you gave then was far more insightful and deep than the Netflix
Don't
special.
go there yet. We will go there. We will go there, right? We will go in two rabbit holes here, right? Firstly, we'll go down the rabbit hole of the Joe Rogan podcast that he appeared on a few weeks ago at the time of this recording with the director that shot this Netflix series, which is called, by the way, what is it? UFOs.
Bob Lazar, UFOs, and Area 51, isn't it?
It's like the most lame, uncreative title ever.
Yeah, he was on this Netflix series, which has been shot, which is a recent, I guess, catch up of where Bob Lazar is, right? But let's go back to what Bob Lazar is and who he is and why he's so prominent in the UFO community, right? UFOs in the 80s were big business. They're a big deal.
Are we going to continue with UFOs or are we going to go with the UAFs as per the new...
So they keep changing the nomenclature.
Well, okay, you guys know more about this than I do.
No, it's okay. I'm only being a shit
No. Well,
the general public knows the UFO.
But the military now refers to them as UAFs.
what's that stand for?
Unidentified...
aerial phenomenon.
Yeah, that's
it.
Okay, right. So in the 80s, even before that, probably the...
can't be F.
What are they?
Is it
UAP,
yeah.
fucking idiots.
So you guys know about this more than I do, right? So
Yeah,
I'm
we
going to
just
have
got
to...
the
I'm massively
acronym
not,
right.
yeah.
Okay, so chase some relaxation. I'll give you some background, Rocket Russell. He was part of SETI at one point. You know what that is?
Oh, yes.
Search for extraterrestrial intelligence. He went down the fucking rabbit hole of rabbit
That's
holes.
a big rabbit hole to go
Mate,
down.
I'm telling you now, you're going to leave here today with rabbit holes that you can't get out of. And I'm going to give you another one before you go home as a homework assignment.
Oh,
No bullshit, right?
no.
So
I should start
you guys
taking
know
notes.
more about this than I do, right? But Bob Lazar, he was in the rabbit hole of saying, I worked in this area of Area 51 called S4. My job was as a propulsion expert, because he was a guy, as a younger guy, for hobbies and fun and shits and giggles, would put jetpacks on the back of his on his push bike,
He had
right?
a daily driver, a Honda Civic with a jet motor in it that he drove around town.
I have a feeling that would not be street legal here.
No.
Maybe in
but it's-
Nevada.
No, it's America.
It's
Have you
America.
seen some of the
They don't
crap
care, man.
you can put on the road there?
They don't care, man.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
They don't care.
Here it wouldn't be street legal.
No.
Nowhere near.
So he had some street cred, right? Now the story with him is he claims, and it's almost been substantiated by some people that have come forward in the recent history of things. He was a graduate of MIT, so
Caltech.
He's no dummy. He's a physicist. He's a propulsion expert.
I believe he has a master's in it, doesn't he? Well,
Supposedly they
masters.
wiped that record.
And I think
yeah.
he's got some chemistry background because his current job is working in a laboratory, basically, I think, dispatching chemicals to...
No,
it's actually an interesting.
Yeah,
it's an interesting
business.
stuff they've got on there. I was on there last night, and I'm really. I had to resist.
You're going to
buying
buy some
of-
kits?
They got this putty stuff that looks. I really want.
He sells kits, doesn't he? So if you
he
want
sells
Educational kits,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
But no, he's expanded. Have you been on there recently?
No.
Oh, you can buy anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
Nice.
Anything in that sort of.
Have a feeling
realm?
our customs will
So dumb. So
Well, we're not going to get uranium into the
So
country.
really layman's terms, very layman's terms. Remember the old chemistry kits you could buy when we were kids, which were half the, I guess, capabilities of what kids could buy
And
in the
twice
50s.
the toxicity.
Right? But in the 50s, you could buy full-blown chemistry kits.
Yeah.
There was
that
one
were
that
got-
was almost nuclear.
That's right.
Come
But
with a
when
bit of
we were
uranium.
kids growing up in the late 70s, 80s, they basically halved that bullshit, and now you can't buy them. But what he does is, if you want to buy a kit yourself and make your own sort of chemistry composition kit or whatever it is, he sells the raw samples or the raw materials in order to do that. That's my understanding of what Bob Lazar does today.
He does that. That's one section, but they've seemed to have expanded it really quite massively.
Yeah.
From when I originally looked on their website.
So a bit of publicity will do that to you.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing with Bob Lazar, right? That's not what he's known for.
No.
What he's known for is, if you're really in the rabbit hole of the UFO community or SETI or whatever it is, he's the godfather, really, of that community, because he came out as one of the first people and said, listen, I worked in Area 51, I worked in S4, which was a part of this area where...
Yeah, it was a bunker in the side of the mountain.
It was a bunker in the side of the mountain where they had an alien spacecraft. He never really, as far as I'm aware, I could be very wrong, and I'm happy to be corrected here, he doesn't really elaborate on where that aircraft came from. As far as I'm aware.
Well, he thinks
There
it was
is-
an archaeological dig.
well, because there's meant to be 9 of them, isn't there?
I thought it was 19.
No,
I thought there was 9.
It's
He-
9.
I know it has a 9
He
in it.
says it. He said
There's
on
different types, and some of them date back to an archaeological dig that no one's 100% sure of.
Yeah, on the Rogan podcast, which we'll get to, he claimed that it was an probably the most significant.
He said he didn't know.
He
He said he didn't know, but he was told that it was an archaeological dig.
Yeah.
He personally,
but he
did
didn't
not know.
say it was from Roswell, which would have got a lot of people excited.
Yeah,
right?
Roswell was a different thing altogether.
Yeah, but he didn't say that. He could have, right? But he didn't. He said that he was reverse engineering this machine. He went into it, they deconstructed it, and while he was doing that, they found some really interesting things. Firstly, how the fuck this thing moved from point A to point B was not of this world, in his opinion. And while he was there, he said a couple of things. One of them was there was a fuel that they found that propelled the thing called element 115.
Element 115?
Right? And it wasn't on the periodic table at that point of time. Yeah?
No. It's not on the point. It wasn't even.
Well,
mentioned back then.
They didn't know what it was.
And they tried to synthesize it, but they couldn't because it kept basically it kept shitting itself.
But they got it to work for like 2 seconds or something, didn't they?
Yeah, they couldn't find a stable variant of it. But that's just science, right? That they've done that with lots of particles where they throw fucking neutrons and things around until they make a particle, but at some point they will find the stable variant, and that could be hundreds of years from now, but they'll find it, and then they can use it as a fuel source.
But at that time, in his opinion, it didn't exist, and it wasn't on the periodic table. And then guess what? In the 90s, it appeared on the periodic table.
2004, I believe.
Early 2000s.
It appeared on the periodic table, and it is now an element of the periodic table. Right, so if I'm wrong in anything, pull me up, right? Because I'm not an expert on Bob Lazar. I just know enough to be dangerous, but I don't know enough to have a debate on it, right? So the thing with Bob Lazar is he said some stuff, and one of the other ones was they're going to expand the area of Area 51 at some point because I've seen the blueprints of it, all right? And everyone's gone, holy shit. So he came forward in 1989 and he spoke to a local reporter about it.
Have you seen the footage?
It's pretty weird. He sits in a dark. It's dark. He's blacked out. He blacks his face out.
Well, it's
doesn't
just shadows in the van.
Yeah.
And
So he didn't want to be identified.
Dennis was his name.
His name was Dennis.
Dennis.
Right, and he had the blurred out voice like, "My name is Dennis." Right, he had all that shit.
I sound like a sock puppet.
Hello, my name is Dennis. I am cute and funny. Right, so he was a sock puppet, but he had his face blacked out.
Yeah,
he was not known to the world as Bob Lazar or Robert Lazar, right? And so put that thing away. I can't talk with that fucking stupid sock puppet around. So this is what happened, and then the world went lit up, and immediately people denied that he worked at Area 51, and the government denied there was an S4. And then they did some basically stomping on his credibility. So certain little things would happen where he claimed he was a graduate at MIT, and all of a sudden there were no records of him attending the school.
Caltech.
Same with Caltech.
Same with his time at what was the laboratory he was at after that?
The big
Nevada.
fancy.
No, it was before Nevada.
So anywhere he worked and anywhere he went to school or university, they disappeared, right? And he kept saying, they're stomping on my credibility, right? And then he did some silly stuff as well, which was in the 90s, he installed some cameras for a brothel.
Going back to a previous conversation.
Yes, but in that part of the world, at that point in time, prostitution was illegal.
In Nevada, it still is.
Okay, I don't know what American law is, but
in some parts.
In some parts,
certain counties in Nevada, it's still illegal.
Yeah,
yes,
right.
but then there are places in Nevada where it's
very legal.
Very
Las
legal.
Vegas, it's not.
No, but it's the outskirts.
The outskirts, yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know why.
But at the end of the day, he installed some cameras there because he had to feed himself. Because by this time in the early 90s,
he was an outcast.
He was an outcast. Mm-hmm. He was basically shunned from all communities. And no one really believed him apart from the diehard, rabid UFO believers, right?
And good old Georgie.
Exactly, right? And so he installed some cameras in a brothel and people pointed more fingers at him going, this guy is a really shady character. He's making this story up to get some fame and fortune and all the rest of it. But really long story short, he's maintained this story right up until today.
Oh, still maintains it.
And he hasn't wavered from it.
Not at all. And I think some of the parts of his story, if you look back, some of them are a bit, but there are little bits and snippets that have sort of just popped out over the last few years where you think, holy crap, he's One of the ones that does it for me is his explanation of the gravity emitters. The three, was it he referred to as trash cans on sticks, wasn't it?
And it pushed something.
And it pushed something.
Yeah.
There's another Netflix doco that's popped up about the American government, and they're admitting there are UFOs as such. And one of the pictures that's tabled, actually, it's not something you'd notice unless you've got into the whole Bob Lazar thing, but there it quite clearly was the three trash cans on sticks. It was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it was kind of like really lame. I don't know shit about this stuff, but basically what he said is that, for a layman, it projected itself to a point and it pulled itself to that point.
Well, no, it basically
moved gravity.
It moved gravity.
So there's
right?
two components. There's two different things that he's talking about. The first one is the...
Because I'm dumb. I don't know.
Yeah. So the first one is the basically anti-gravity projection, or whatever it is. It's basically creating anti-gravity so it flies in the first place.
Yep.
The second one is what it does is actually bend space and time. So basically it'll... And... You know, a good example, and they talk about this. I mean, this is known physics, where if you've got a blanket or something and you stick a heavy ball or something in the middle, other objects will roll towards it. So what it's basically doing is creating that in the, gravitational
I
space
fucking
and
hated
time.
physics at school.
Yeah.
Oh, that was my worst subject at school.
Mine was just school.
I fucked it up in the HSC.
Oh.
I didn't do well at it. But what I'm trying to do is establish who Bob Lazar is before we start nitpicking into recent events, right? So
he's a guy who, from a young age has been into science, basically. And
he got recruited. This is his own words. He got recruited into a military program,
Which he thought was cool and
which
fun.
he thought was cool at the time as a very young guy. Why wouldn't you do it? The military came to him because his words, they knew that he was a guy that was a... What the fuck was that?
That's volume on my phone.
Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. You know what that is? It's the aliens are calling.
I don't know. This thing beats
E.T.
something. It's probably the FBI. FBI.
The FBI are onto us, man.
Yeah, man.
They're onto us, man.
We're not even streaming the fucks.
No, but
that's how good their technology is.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So what I'm trying to establish is he got recruited by the military, right? And then they said, "Come and work for us because you're a supposed propulsion expert. We've got something we want you to reverse engineer." His accounts of his working life are pretty interesting, where he was basically, you don't ask questions, you get told to do what you've got to do, and you don't waver from that, right?
No, and
you don't talk to anybody. You don't talk to anybody. You don't ask questions.
And they were very careful with what they got to see.
Yes.
So they were sort of, you only get to go into this one room, so you don't get to see the bigger, broader picture.
Now, people would have said that's bullshit. And right up until quite recently, they said, well, everything you say about how you walked into work in terms of like how you clocked on and clocked off is bullshit. Because he claimed that he would put his hand on a hand sensor and it would read the bone length of his fingers, which is unique to every individual, which I didn't know that, by the way, but it is. And he said, well, this device existed and that's how... You clocked into work at S4 and how you clocked out, right? And everyone said, well, you haven't got a leg to stand on because it doesn't exist. We can't find any evidence of what you're saying. So therefore, what you're telling us about this facility is bullshit. But lo and behold, many, many years later, up until very recently,
this year,
2019,
years,
this thing's appeared, right?
Yep. And he's actually in a couple of places, apparently.
Yeah, it's appeared. Right, and he's gone, and people have come to him with the photographic evidence and said, "Is that what you're talking about?" And he said, "Yes, it is." And so,
here's an interesting fact on that.
What's that?
So it's appeared in multiple places. One was in the US, another deep tech area or whatever it was. The other one was actually in the Soviet Union. And if you read deeply into his story, early on, the Russians were working very, very closely with the United States.
Well, I mean, the word paperclip pops up, doesn't it?
Yeah,
several times.
Yeah, Operation Paperclip's more after World War II, where they recruited Nazi scientists to work on their propulsion.
I don't know if you'd go as far as saying the word recruit.
They were basically told, you come and work with us.
You're going to Russia, you're coming to America.
And that is why modern-day NASA has a lot of Nazi
affiliation.
Affiliation because they were they had the technology for rocket propulsion, and therefore they were recruited. I'm going to use the word recruited to come and work for us Otherwise, you're not going to have a much of a good
We
life.
just crushed your country. We want
That's
you to come
right.
in here.
That's right. So Bob Lazar, the thing that he was hanging on is, in order for his story to be substantiated, was when I went into work, there was a hand scanner and I put my hand on it, and I walked out after work and I put my hand on it, and that's it. And everyone said, well, what is this thing?
It doesn't exist.
Right, it doesn't exist, but guess what? It has appeared. Now, I can't verify if it's real or not because I haven't seen it, but that's what his claim was hanging on, and it's been substantiated.
I don't think anyone will ever see it because it's old tech, isn't it?
No, it's
really
old tech. Yeah. He reckons it was very unreliable.
Unreliable.
Unreliable,
Yeah. So that's what he was clinging on to. So Bob Lazar, in what I've understood of him, his story hasn't wavered one little bit from 1989 right till 2019. So we're talking about 30 years, right?
Look, no, he's stuck to his guns.
Right.
Yeah, which is...
Yep. And he's seen some more sorts of shit, right? And he validated that there was an element that was element 115. It wasn't on the periodic table. Lo and behold, it went on the periodic table. Area 51 would be expanded because he saw the plans, and it would be expanded in the 90s. Guess what? It happened.
You're missing a really important piece, the way that he got busted in the first way. He had the test flight schedules, right? And he was able to go, it's going to come at this time on this particular day, and lo and behold, they got fucking busted because they were watching these things in the sky.
Is that what cost him his job?
That's what cost him everything.
Yeah, right. Now, so I guess...
The only reason he came out in the first place was because he knew he was in shit.
Okay.
And he was worried, and his friends were saying, you need to go public. If you don't go public, they're going to bump you off.
That was my question to you guys, because I can't remember how he went public and why he went public.
That was the only reason he did it. He didn't want to.
Yeah.
But he's saying, if I don't go public, then they're just going to quietly bump me off and nobody ever know I existed.
Yep.
But if I go public, they can't bump me off because then it starts the conspiracy theorists off.
So, long story...
Conspiracy theories don't really need much to get them...
Yeah, but that would be it, right?
No. So long story short, this guy, for the layman, claims he's been inside of and outside of and reverse engineered an alien spacecraft. Right?
Or part thereof.
Part thereof.
Yeah, they were tempted to.
Cool.
And like he says, it goes in and out of storage. They bring it out every 10 years or so. Have a
well,
look
that was
at it.
interesting in itself. Like the whole idea that they gave up and they keep giving up. So they every 10 years they go, do we now have the baseline technology to deconstruct this thing?
Yeah.
No.
Because at the time they didn't have the technology to even deconstruct
And
it. Or
who knows how
understand
long
it.
they've been trying to deconstruct this thing? It could be 100 years.
Yeah, they don't know. Well, he never says how long the thing's
imagine
been
that's
there.
not saying you'd know, is it?
No.
It's not saying that they're going to
No.
go, oh, look, we've had this for
But
90 years.
I want to know how he knows it was excavated or it was an archaeological
No,
find.
apparently they got briefed. So they were given briefs as part of their thing.
He read all the briefings.
He read all the
didn't
briefings, but then it was included in those briefings or hearsay on the base.
Yeah. Now, I just want to establish his story a little bit before we go into modern day Bob Lazar, because that's what we really want to get down to, the nuts and bolts of it. A couple of things waver his characterization a little bit, in my opinion, and I want you guys to pull me up short if I'm incorrect or you disagree. The first thing was he was working for a brothel installing cameras. Who gives a fuck, right? But he did it. And people were saying
The only reason-
he did it to survive, and it was money, right? And,
And
he
he's
had
come out and said that
Didn't he
pretty
have
much.
a camera shop, or he was he had a security business?
It was into security
So,
and
but people
money.
poked holes in him as a defamation of his
Which
character.
in the
right?
United States, that is a big deal.
Okay.
Sex is in a very Christian country goes down really well.
So here's the thing: people poked holes at him for that. All right, I'm just trying to poke negatives on his character.
Yep.
The other and we can say, okay, we can counteract that, because the second one is his history suddenly got erased. His appearance at MIT, his graduation from Caltech, right?
His years at
all
the
that stuff.
lab.
All these years working in a lab, all the people that he claimed were working with him at S4, none of them said that he worked, apart from one. We'll get to it. That was a smear on him as well. So that's another.
He's had a
negative.
couple of people come out.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
And
right?
he's apparently got names, but he doesn't
But
want
in
to give them out
89
because of the shit that goes down with knowing Bob Lazar.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is in 1989 to the mid-90s or thereabouts, there were negatives thrown at him to try and cover this all up and to try and make him sound a little bit worse than he actually was. And so these are
And
the
it still happens. I mean, during the documentary, he got
we will
raided
get
by
to
the
it.
FBI.
We'll get to it. We'll get to that fucking documentary, right? We'll get to it. But what I'm saying is, before all of that, they said, well, there's no evidence you graduated from MIT or Caltech. You didn't work at this facility because all the people you named, they don't know who you are. This hand scanner that you claim that you used to clock in and out of doesn't exist. You are known to have worked with a brothel, which at the time was illegal. Installing security cameras were there. And the other
that part would still be illegal.
Yeah, but the other fuck up was that he claimed to have seen an alien. Right? Now, he's since retracted that, which is a mistake. He should never
really
have said
retracted
it.
it. He said he's
saying, it was a glimpse.
It was a glimpse.
But
it
at
wasn't
the
long
time,
enough. Yes.
Hear me out. At the time, he said, if I'm a skeptic, right? So I want to play a little bit of a skeptic role here, right? To try and balance this out, right? So we don't have a love affair with Bob Lazar, because I secretly do, right? Because I want to believe, because it's what?
There's a book right there that Russ might be interested in reading.
Oh, yeah, don't do that. I'm trying to.
It's not dynamics,
you fuck me
is
up
it?
all the time with that shit. You fuck me up. I was thinking, don't do that.
I'm just trying to work out, is it Mr. Angry, Mr.
Yeah,
Happy?
it's right. He fucks me up all the time. He does that shit, and then I can't remember, and he knows I've got a shit memory.
Okay,
right?
so we're on the last of your points.
I've fucked up now. He's fucked me. He always does it. He interrupts me, or he does that shit, and now I can't remember. And now I will go on a rant because he does it all the fucking time. Right? I say something, and he goes, oh, well, look at this. Oh, I interrupt. Fucking, you're an idiot. Now I can't remember.
Pretty
You fuck.
late.
And you know what he'll do? He'll cut it all out. Because then it'll look like he's innocent.
I'll just walk away in a minute, mate, and turn it off.
That's what he'll do. Now, what I'm trying to say is, there were a couple of little things that didn't quite make sense, and I'm talking about during the 90s, right? Yes. And so the things were, the hand scanner, where is it? The colleagues that you said you work with, where are they? Your history with graduating from MIT, Caltech, where is it? Right? The people you went to school with, like I'm talking Caltech, MIT, because they call it school over there.
Yep.
Who are they? They don't know who you are, right? Because we'll get to all of this, why they might have done that, right? But the last point I want to make is the one little fuck up that I think he might have made was, I saw an alien. And then later on he retracted that by saying it was probably a mock-up doll, because what we discovered in the alien spacecraft was a giant chair, right, or some kind of console where a being might have sat in, and they were playing with a doll potentially, or a mock-up of this figure, to try and ascertain how big it would be to play with the controls. And I don't know if it's an alien, but at one point he said it was.
Yes.
Am I right or wrong? Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
He did,
So
and
that's a little bit of iffy stuff around him. And you've got to have that, because you can fall in love with his story really easily, right?
I mean, that goes with the for a guy who's amazing memory, where's this letter? That's one of my big questions. Where's this letter that you say you got for the position?
Yes, that's a big one. Where is it?
Where is this letter?
Where is this
kept
letter?
Everything else.
Yes. Right.
What was the other one? I've had a Dan moment. I've forgotten my second one.
I can't even blame this fuckwit for that.
I can't even blame myself. It's just fucking old age. The letter.
The hand scanner with
The hand
Well, the
That
other
one?
thing that I like.
Oh, and the length of time he worked there.
Yes.
Yeah, there's that. The other thing that I'm baffled by is that he doesn't have any certifications from his university days either. So if you graduated from MIT or Caltech, you probably would have a diploma on the wall.
No, but there's that. But yes, that is iffy, because the one thing that he says, and I will agree that this absolutely 100% would have happened, people can easily erase history. Right. So
Back then, absolutely.
Back then, right?
Not so much now.
Not so much now, but back then, 100%, they could have easily, some government agency could have come in and said, this person that you've got on your records, they weren't here. Oh, yes, they were. No, they weren't. No, yeah, they were. No, you're not listening to me. They weren't here. And who was his classmates? Oh, this guy. Go talk to them. You don't know Bob Lazar, do you? Yes, I do. No, you're not hearing me. You don't know Bob Lazar, right? And so all of a sudden, history back in those days could have easily been erased. But you're right. Jason's right. You would have had something physical, I would have believed, hanging on your wall.
Yeah, and
right?
it's the same as the letter.
But,
I mean, that kind of letter is something that you'd keep.
But did it get in the various raids that he's had.
But see, if you're going to go down the path of various raids, then okay, so there's his certificates gone as well.
Yeah. So before we get to the modern day Bob Lazar, which is really the butt of this conversation.
So we should add in there that bits have been proven through newspaper articles that have been found, which admitted that he was working for the lab at the time.
Yep.
And was it the Caltech book?
Yeah, there was something in the actual
in the student directory.
Student directory that he existed.
He's listed.
As well.
There's another one. He was in a newspaper, a local newspaper, as a young kid that was putting
was for the Honda.
Yes, right.
Yep.
He put a jet on the back of a Honda.
With, what was it? The grandfather of hydrogen bomb.
Yeah,
so that's what got him because he met him.
So
in
I don't
82.
think that. See, I get that he was into propulsion, but I don't know if strapping a jet on the back of your car qualifies you as being truthful.
No.
More so than it qualifies you being a nut job.
What? No. What happened there is you're being fair and balanced, but the counter argument to that is that the whole time he was saying he was a propulsion expert and he graduated from MIT and Caltech. And this local newspaper article clearly states that that's where he was from. Now, he could have bullshitted about that, but that's one bit of evidence that they didn't find. Or they overlooked, right?
It's public record. They can't remove it.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. But, mate, can I tell you, public records be changed. If you are an agency as big as the FBI or the CIA, things can happen, right?
Well, not even the CIA.
It's more like local library.
Yeah, but it can happen.
Microfilm.
It can fucking happen, right?
Yeah,
You can disappear pretty easily. If you need to be made disappeared, you can go, right? But before we get to modern day Bob Lazar, my big question to Bob Lazar would be, if he was sitting in that chair where you are, Rocket Russell, and I'm a skeptic, like a professional skeptic, right? I would probably say to him, why are you still alive? Because people have been assassinated for fucking less. They assassinated a president, JFK, arguably, for less.
Well, interesting that you bring. Well, I'll stop you there. So JFK, we don't know why he was assassinated, but there are rumors that he was assassinated on similar grounds, that he wanted to tell the world about UFOs and alien technology, and that was the reason he got done.
I forgot about that.
So what's that rabbit hole?
That's another big rabbit hole.
That's a massive
rabbit hole. Where JFK wanted to reveal the existence.
Oh, I mean, the other rabbit hole is he wanted to come out about Marilyn Monroe. There were so many.
Why would you? I mean, that wouldn't be enough to assassinate someone.
Excuse me. If I'm sleeping with Marilyn Monroe, I'm coming out about
I'm coming out too.
Fuck
I love you, Jess, but Marilyn Monroe.
No, but you know what I'm trying to say?
She's skin and bones now, but that's not the...
But you know what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to say, if I'm a professional skeptic like someone, I think his name's Brian Shermer, he's a professional skeptic on this shit, look him up. He's interesting because he writes a magazine over in the States. I can't remember the name of it, but
I think it's called Skeptic.
It's called Skeptic. That's all it is, right?
Yeah, I've seen
Are you taking the piss?
No, I'm dead serious.
No, so that he writes an article that basically tries to debunk. That's the maid lady trying to contact us from interdimensional.
Interdimensional.
That's right. I won't even do it today, even though I'm wearing my fucking Alex Jones t-shirt. But what I'm trying to say is, why is he still alive? Right? Now, he's had the FBI raided him many a time, right? His business and his home. I'm sure they're looking for shit, right? And he still stands. And that doesn't smell right to me. Now, is it that he disappears and people become, maybe he was telling the truth that that he was saying all along and now he's dead. Well, you know what? People can die naturally. Do you know what I mean? They can fucking disappear naturally, right? And so that would be the first question I'd ask him. Do you live in fear? Yes, I do. Okay, cool. Why are you still standing 30 years later? Because most people, because I want to know, because if he has potentially the biggest secret that the human race is looking for, right? And as Rogan put it himself, the big things that people want to know, the answers to are, what happens when you die? And is there alien life?
And
right?
What's the question to 42?
That's right. But that's one of the big ones. Is there alien life? And this guy reckons he knows the answer to it, or he's got part of the pieces of the puzzle. And yet most people would be very scared of that because all of a sudden religion crumbles. You've got government.
I can't wait for that.
Government crumbles, right? You get fear in society that we've got this alien presence that has got way more technology than we do.
What do you mean we're not God's only children?
That's right. But what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying? So why is this guy still standing? That would be my question to him.
I think maybe he's a vessel of misinformation as well, to some extent.
Well,
and he's sort of self-admitted to that. He goes, there are things that I was briefed on, but I don't know if they're true.
And he said that quite often. They put incorrect information in briefings, so they know
Who let it out.
Each person's brief is different, and if you say something, hello, that was Retro Danielle over there was the coming out with that bit of information.
So potentially he is a distractor from what's happening.
Well, the other
today.
thing I was thinking of too, and this is something that's been thrown at me a couple of times when I've talked about Bob Lazar and other things related to UFOs, is that sometimes, very subtly, certain mediums will try and put the information out there very subtly, like in movies or something like this, so that people get used to the idea of it. And then when it happens...
That explains Men in Black.
Yes. Well, do you know Men in Black's a thing? That's real.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, there was a government agency called Men in Black, and they went around covering shit up.
Well, it's Project Blue Book nowadays, isn't it?
Yes, right? So that's another fucking rabbit hole. So your Hollywood movie of Men in Black really annoyed me because that was a comedy relief bullshit thing. I actually wanted the real Men in Black. I wanted to see these characters that would turn up after certain accidents.
Well, they were famous for Roswell, weren't they?
Yes, they turned up. These Men in Black, they turned up in suits after the Roswell crash and made sure the public didn't get anywhere near it and didn't ask any questions. And so what if Bob Lazar is a medium of, I'm going to give you some information that I'm allowed to give you, not that he's aware of it, but someone above him's pulling, he's a puppet. And they're pulling the knobs and they're leveraging him and they're letting him say shit so that the public gets aware of it. That's all I'm saying. I'm putting it out there because I find it very hard to believe if people didn't want you to say shit, he'd be dead.
He's basically saying the right amount of shit.
He's saying the right amount of shit at the right time, right? And it's softening the blow.
So why all of a sudden 20-something years, 30-something years later is he starting to say shit? That's the interesting point.
The interesting thing.
Well, he seems to have little spells, doesn't he?
Yes.
He'll do something like 89, 91, 92.
Disappear.
He sort of disappears and then come back in the early 2000s, disappeared again.
So every 10 years he disappears.
It seems to be something like that, doesn't it?
So let's talk about this now, right?
I have an idea.
He's reappeared. And why has he reappeared? I'll throw one at you. I don't know if that's what you're about to say, but I'll throw one at you. It sort of coincides with an increase of UFO activity. Now, we talked about this, Rocket Russell, you and I, before we got up here, right?
Did you know there was a big earthquake in
San 7.2 yesterday in LA, but that's, I don't think, related. But what I'm saying is that in the 80s...
I'm interested to hear your diversion there. I'll go back to that one.
Yeah, he fucks me up all the time. Stop it. Stop it, man.
Sorry, I won't jump on his bandwagon.
You fuck me up and I can't remember shit. It fucks me up. You fucking idiot. So we're having a little spat today.
If I had a heart, I'd be hurt.
Yeah, fuck off. So what if we talked about it in the late 70s and the 80s, there was a lot of UFO stories, right? The 90s, it was pretty damn quiet. And then in the early 2000s and to very recently, like they reckon in the last couple of years, UFO sightings are actually at one of their highest, right? Now Bob Lazar's come out again. And he's done a Netflix series. He's been on the Joe Rogan podcast, which is the biggest podcast or one of the biggest podcasts in the world.
Third biggest.
Well, we're the biggest.
Of course, Invert the Why.
Fucking oath we are. Rate and comment and subscribe, you fucks. But what I'm saying
Patreon.
Oh, yeah. The day we get Patreon, you know what one of the Patreons will be? I'll do a nudie run so everyone can look at my small doodle as I run down the street in the winter.
And that's the lower level.
And that's the fucking lowest level. Right, because it ain't going to happen.
That's for $2.
It ain't going to happen. That's how confident I am that we will never get a Patreon, right? And you can hold me to that, you internet motherfuckers. So what I'm saying is he's come back again. Now, is it related to an increase of UFO activity? I don't know, right? But I'm throwing it out there because it just seems interesting to me that you're right. He comes in, he goes, right? And if he was consistent, he'd probably be considered a nutter. Because he'd be banging the drum all the time, you know. Yeah. But I think he might be a conduit or a tool to soften the blow, right?
He does keep pointing out in the last couple of interviews I've seen with him that he doesn't really want to be doing this. He doesn't want to be out here doing this. But I mean, I imagine it's part of the signature on the dotted paper for the documentary money.
We'll get to this.
Yeah, you've got to.
We'll get to this.
We've got to do so many media.
You know what I
outlets.
say, softening the blow? I don't know if you watched one of the latest Joe Rogan podcasts with Joey Diaz on there.
No, not yet.
I love Joey Diaz, man. But he's told a story because he grew up in Union City in New York, right? I don't know where that is, I'll be honest with you. I don't. I've been in New York once in my life, right? So I've got no idea where that is. But it's a very densely, heavily populated part of the US, right? And he told a story that I think it was 1976, a UFO landed in a park in the middle of Union City, in the middle of all these apartment blocks. And he didn't see it, but he heard so many people come forward and tell the story that they saw someone get out of this spacecraft, dig up the soil, and go back into the spacecraft and fuck off. Google that bullshit. Union City, New York, 1976. That's a rabbit hole you won't get out of.
Mind you,
Rocket
Joey
Russell.
Diaz is known for a fair bit of smoke.
He does, but mate, there wasn't just him that said it. Many people said it, right? Now, what I'm saying to you is this. I'm throwing this out there. What if the blow was softened because people like Bob Lazar have gone around for years and said, hey, this is real. Folks, get ready for it. So when you next see a UFO, don't be freaked out by it, right? If you don't have someone like Bob Lazar running around telling you this shit,
you do get mass panic.
You're going to get mass panic. That's what I'm trying to say. So people like Bob Lazar, I think, are allowed to run around and say these sorts of things, go on a podcast that pulls in millions of people, millions of views, and walk away to tell the fucking tale and not have a mysterious heart attack or mysterious road accident, right? Because that shit's happened in the past. People have had mysterious road accidents, right? Or mysterious illnesses.
Mysterious
or they suddenly get
suicides.
fucking cancer, or they're found hanging in their rafters in the basement, right?
Accidental drug overdose.
Exactly. All this shit's real. And my question would be to Bob Lazar, why are you fucking still walking around on the planet with probably the most significant event to occur to the human race? And that is the answer of the question, does something else exist in the universe? And I think it's because he's allowed to walk around and tell the fucking tale. And he's allowed to tell the tale because we want to soften the blow. Because guess what, folks? At some point it's going to happen. Right?
Well,
and Joey Diaz's story about a UFO landing in Union City in 1976, I think it was 1976, in New York. 1975 was better, you fuck.
No.
Right? He's a year younger than me. That's why he's saying it. But that would be mass panic shit, right? Independence Day would be max
Oh,
panic.
him, okay, yes, I know who
You know who I'm
Diaz,
talking about?
yes.
Joey Diaz. So that's what I'm saying. That'd be the first question I'd ask Bob Lazar. Why are you still walking around on the planet? Now, do you feel we've covered who Bob Lazar is enough to move on? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, let's move on.
You've done more than the documentary, which is a segue for you.
Okay, that's a segue. So, Bob Lazar slash, what's the director's name?
Oh, who cares? It's horrible.
Jeremy-
Colbert something, isn't it?
Quickly look that up. I don't want to misinform.
It's Jeremy something. Oh, hang on. I'll just go to my phone because the podcast of.
So, a new series has appeared on Netflix called what? UFOs? Bob Lazar.
UFOs and aliens or some shit.
Let me rant for a second. That was the worst documentary I've ever seen.
Jeremy Corbell, yeah.
Okay, he's a fucking idiot. I called him out. He's a fucking smashed avocado eating prick, right? You can quote me that, you fucking internet idiots, because that documentary was that was shameful, right?
Should we-
Because it did nothing.
Let's list our grievances with that podcast.
First one, let me not the podcast. I'll get to the podcast.
No, sorry, I meant the Netflix
The Netflix special.
Yep.
Let's get to that, and Rocket Russell chime in. And correct me if I'm wrong, please. Right? Number one, what the fuck's Mickey Rourke doing narrating the fucking thing? You couldn't understand him for a fucking anything, right?
What was with the fucking bizarre scenery behind it when he's talking?
Let me get to it. So Mickey Rourke is going on and going like, are we alone
in the universe?
in the universe? Hey, Randy, you want to play Nintendo? Like the fucking wrestler, right, that he was in. Why on earth would they do that? And then they'd have these weird images and weird lighting. I know they're trying to dramatize it or whatever you want to call it.
Tell the fucking story.
Just tell the story of Bob Lazar.
That's dramatic
He's
enough.
watched too many J.J. Abrams movies.
It was
and
like
likes
a-
good flair here and
He's
there.
fucking had
lens
too many
flare,
avocados.
blurred images, incoherent storyline. They didn't explain who Bob Lazar was. Okay, maybe you could assume that people know who he is. Okay, let's say you jump the gun on that and save some time. But then you don't explain what the fuck he's currently doing and why he's still significant.
There was no purpose to the documentary.
Right? There was no purpose to it. You know, my other gripe is they contact the original guy from the media who interviewed him, George Knapp, and they had him on a fucking speakerphone on a mobile phone. It made no sense. So they're interviewing George Knapp on a speakerphone, on a mobile phone. Are you kidding me? Why didn't they get George Knapp into a room and interview him and go, what were your impressions of Bob Lazar? Was he actually telling the truth or was he bullshitting? Oh no, let's just sit on our couch on our fucking soy boy smashed avocado eating bullshit lounge and interview him that way. It made no fucking sense. Correct me if I'm wrong. I want you to correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I can't correct you.
And here's the other thing. You can't substantiate that it was really him on the phone either.
No, you can't because it was all distorted, right? But he was interviewed at some parts of that documentary, which also made no sense.
And his answers generally were quite wishy-washy. Yep. You'll have to speak to him about that.
Yes. Speak to Bob about that. Bob's never wavered from the fact that there was a hand scanner. Speak to Bob about that. You're kidding me. You interviewed the guy. You were the first guy to interview Bob Lazar when he was known as Dennis, and you couldn't reveal his identity. And this is why I smell a rat. Not with Bob Lazar, but in the general scheme of things. Bob Lazar was in fear of his life because he was blacked out and he went known as Dennis. Then suddenly he was walking the earth and walking around the planet telling his story.
That is one of the things
Isn't
I
that
find very
fishy?
bizarre as well.
That's what I'm asking. That would be the first question I asked him. If I was Schumer, he's a professional skeptic, and I don't like skeptics because I agree they're lazy. They just want to pick holes in things, and you can easily do that. That's very lazy. But the question I would ask Bob Lazar is, please explain to me why you're still on the planet. And I've not heard one person fucking ask that question.
You know what? I think there's a couple of reasons why. So just going back to that particular...
But we haven't finished the fucking documentary yet. I'm going to rant more.
Just a couple of interesting points I want to pick up on. So he clearly did something illegal when he was out there watching the UFOs with his mates. That was very, very illegal for a number of reasons. One, leaking very sensitive...
I think he was a young guy just trying to impress his
And I'm
mates.
sure with all the contracts he would have signed.
They could have put him away in a federal
That's
prison for
also
life.
exactly. So how did he walk away to tell the tale?
And they've done it for less. They've done it to people for
That's what I'm
trying to
saying.
jump the fence.
Right? So
Yes.
I reckon they've given him a deal. They've gone, but you're going to be our bitch.
So I'm gonna hold you up. Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna do what you do to me. Right. But you can remember shit and I can't. Right. People have been caught breaking into Area 51 and have been fucked up over it. I'm telling you now, they've been locked in a federal prison and allowed to rot. There is documented evidence on that shit, right? And yet Bob Lazar fucking walked away to tell the tale. And you're right. Go to your point now. Pick that up.
Yep. So
he's been made a deal.
He's been made a deal, and part of that is you're going to go on camera when we want you to go on camera. And funnily, he also mentioned in his initial conversations that it's every decade we pull out the UFOs and we start deconstructing them, which seems to correlate to when they get more UFO activity.
Yep.
So if you piece it together, you've got Bob Lazar every 10 years coming out and saying and reminding people of what was going on. You've got an increase in UFO activity around about the same sort of time. And then on top of that, you've got this guy who's able to walk freely and go nuts. When
it
he
blows
really,
my mind, man.
Out of anybody in the community who should have been locked up for doing stuff that's illegal,
They've killed
That's actually-
multiple occasions. The fucker got away from doing something illegal in a fucking whorehouse.
Yep.
He should have gone to jail for that.
But what I mean is people have been killed for less. They've been locked up in federal prisons for less.
He's a puppet.
That's what I think. Right, I do believe he's telling the truth. I do believe that he's telling
Absolutely,
what
but
he
I think-
because the story hasn't wavered and he hasn't broken. However, he looked like he was breaking on the Rogan podcast,
that was a shocker.
we will get to that. But to pick up the Netflix documentary again, which is available on Netflix, that documentary proved that there was so much that they couldn't say.
It came across as one of two things. Either there's only so much they can say.
Yep.
And the way that he was phrasing things were very cautious.
Yep.
Or alternatively, that director had zero clout.
Yes.
in the community, and they've basically, like, when he was interviewing the initial reporter was like, who the fuck are you? I don't have time for your bullshit.
Look, I'm sitting here at the moment wikiing our director. I don't know. He actually was the lead speaker for the International UFO Congress meeting in 2015. So he must have a little bit.
He's got a little bit of knowledge.
I'm talking about in the actual director.
Oh, okay, yep.
Not so much in the UFO community, but more in the filmmaking community.
See, my problem with that documentary was when they finally got over all the arty-farty, Mickey Rourke voiceover bullshit, the J.J. Abrams lens flare.
Yeah.
The director, what was his name again? Sorry,
Jeremy
Corvell. He asked Bob Lazar the question, "Do you have a sample of element 115?" And then he said, "I will record it, but I will get rid of it, or I'll do something so that you don't incriminate yourself." And then they sped it up.
Yeah,
they did that fast forward bullshit like an old VHS tape, and so you never actually found out that real answer to that question, which I find strange. If you've come out and said this thing exists, and you've basically said that aliens exist, or I've worked on an alien spacecraft, why can't you fucking say that you've got element 115? The feds already raid your place. They fucking must have found it, because feds don't miss shit. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck are you hiding? That did not look good for you.
I mean, if we go down your conspiracy theories, I mean, the raid every year or so, every couple of years, may just be a thing to go, oh, hello, Bob Lazar, I've been raided again.
Yes.
Here we go. Let's get
it all looks staged
let's get
to
the
me.
talking again.
That looks staged to me, man. When they did that documentary, that fucking looked staged to me. I'm telling you now, when the cops pulled up and they said they were FBI,
oh, that would have been staged. There's no way
that was staged.
filmed.
That was fucking staged. That's why that documentary did nothing for Bob Lazar. It made him look worse than he actually really
Maybe
is.
that's part of the point.
Could be.
Maybe that's the handing of the torch.
That was my problem with the documentary. It did nothing for Bob Lazar. It actually put more...
It actually didn't even tell the story. It didn't reveal anything new. It didn't comment on anything that was meaningful.
Yeah, the only thing I mean it really showed, for me personally, was the picture of the scanner he found.
Yeah, big fucking deal.
And the other thing was they did confirm the existence of his fellow co-worker at the S4 facility.
Yes.
That weird... What was his name? He had a weird surname, Pinky something.
Oh, yeah, the Mexican dude.
They found him. But he wouldn't talk.
No.
That's the other fucking thing. So again, that documentary did nothing for him. Like the director made a big song and dance about, I found him, Bob. I found him. I found your coworker, whatever his name is. I found him, and I know it's only one of a kind because he's got such an unusual surname. I found him, Bob. This is great news, and they fucking didn't do shit with it because at the last minute, very conveniently, I don't want to talk. And yes, we could say the FBI/CIA, whoever it is, said to this guy, "You don't know Bob Lazar, do you?" "Yes, I do." No, you don't. I think you're mistaken.
I think the one thing you're missing here is this is going to be a juggernaut for this guy, for this Jeremy.
Yes, I think it was very selfish.
But you got to look at it from the bigger picture. Are we going to see a part 2? Because there was quite a few. But sitting through the podcast, which we'll come up to next,
we'll get to that. Yep.
There's quite a few times, at least 3 or 4 times, he said during that podcast, "Oh no, well
they're going to talk to me next time, or they're going to talk."
There's
they've
more.
agreed.
There's more to come out on that.
Yeah, they've agreed to talk.
It was at least 3 or 4 times he said, "Oh, well, you just wait. There's something about to come out about that."
Yeah.
You know, there's.
I wouldn't be surprised. He's setting himself up for a sequel or something.
It's up there with the Flat Earth Society. You know? It's a great society to be able to get into. There's good money being made out of it.
Well, it's fun.
It's big enough society.
And it's fun as well. You want to look. The Flat Earthers...
I think it'd be a more fun society than the Flat Earth.
They are. But the Flat Earthers... can I tell you, there was a documentary. What was that documentary? Under the Rim?
Curve.
Under the Curve?
No, that was my favourite thing.
What was the documentary called? Under the Rim? Under the Curve?
It was Curve. Beyond the Curve. Or
Under the Dirt? Under the Dome or something?
Under the Dome. I think that was it. Beneath the Dome?
Beneath the Dome.
Yeah.
Right. Now that one, can I tell you...
Oh, jeez, it was great.
The people on that, they just want attention. What about there was one on there, she looked like an ex-porn star. Right, and
the girlfriend of
the girl. Well, no,
sorry, not the girlfriend.
He wanted. Well,
yeah, they've definitely fucked.
They definitely fucked. You can tell, right? You know what? He was married, but he liked her, right? And she was single. Mm-hmm. I can tell you, they went to a hotel room and they were talking about flat Earth. One thing led to another, and that was it, man. It was on like fucking Donkey Kong, I'm telling you now. You know what? They tested their flat Earth theory on their flat bed. That's what they fucking did. They absolutely did. So I think they just look for attention. I don't think Bob Lazar's looking for attention. I actually think he's trying to avoid it. But I think he gets dragged in.
He's being forced into it.
He gets forced into it.
Behind the Curve.
Behind the Curve. That was the name of the... that's another good one.
If you have not watched that,
Oh, it's great.
get yourself some popcorn.
Have you
Because
watched-
it is a comedy.
Oh, yeah, of course I've watched it.
Yeah.
Behind the Curve on Netflix, which is a Flat Earth Society documentary about these
The ending
flat
of that
earthers.
documentary is my favourite moment in documentary history. When they can't get the fucking laser to line up.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Brilliant.
That's
Oh, yeah.
beautiful.
It literally proves
Yeah.
once and for all that the Earth is.
But you know what it is for those people? I'm sorry. I know they believe what they think is right,
But they're
it's a
wrong.
hobby for them. And some of them, like that guy,
It's another one of
that
those-
guy and that girl, right? I can't remember their names. The main guy, right?
Their money. It's in it for the money. They know it's
no.
bullshit.
They're in originally. They are now, but originally they wanted purpose, mate. He
It's
was
like religion.
It's,
Yeah,
he
it's-
wanted a purpose, man. And then you know what? And then he started getting more and more attention. He got more and more fame. Then he got people believing in him. Then he had like a little following. It became
Then you got a Patreon account.
yeah, and they got a couple, but they got a cult, right?
Trust me, they
then
got
he
a
was
bit of
hanging
money.
out with
Oh,
that.
yeah.
But then he was hanging out with that fucking redhead, that hot.
Neither of them believe in it. I guarantee they'd have to know it's
I
bullshit.
don't think she does. I think he does.
Yeah.
She
I
believes
think-
in the money that it
She
provides
believes in
her.
the money because you know what I reckon she is. If
She's
you-
the maid lady.
I reckon. Well, I reckon if you looked at her, she would have been certainly a failed actress in some way. I'm sorry to say, I reckon she would have been, right?
Well, she's a fellow podcaster, so we shouldn't pick on her.
We shouldn't pick on her. And
She's a vodcaster.
You know what?
She
We
does the
should start
videos.
talking about flat Earth. We should talk about flat Earth because you know what? I bet she gets more fucking views in 1 minute than we get in the fucking.
Oh, mate, I'm adding flat Earth to this
that's
fucking
it,
topic.
flat Earth. But
Well, we've discussed it. It can go on the SEOs.
going back
it's doing
to
it.
Bob
I'm
Lazar.
still on the flat Earth thing. I still cannot believe they're still trying to fund their expedition in 2020.
I thought they already had funded it.
Apparently, they've got the big international conference in a couple of weeks. So they were asking everyone to chip in.
I'd love to go to
They
that.
got some fucking.
Just so you know, flat earthers, Qantas runs a flight down there once a year. You can fly down there. It's only a few $100.
You know what else you can do? You can actually fly over the top of the North Pole. It's like a regular flight between the United States.
There was actually
and
a great Top Gear episode where they drove to the North Pole.
They drove to the
You'll
North
see
Pole.
there's
Do you know what my theory about flat Earth is? And I'm being serious now.
it's like a cannoli.
No.
That was mine.
No.
That was a good
This
one.
is
I
going to
like
be
that one.
controversial shit. And I haven't forgotten about Bob Lazar and the Joe
No,
Rogan
no.
podcast yet, but let's get to this. I honestly believe that intelligence of the human race is declining rapidly.
Oh God, yes.
Right?
It's
now, I'll
deliberate.
tell you why. I used to have this. You remember when I was at work, right? I used to say to you, you know the bell curve of the distribution of data, and there's upper control limits and lower control limits, and there's a bell curve. I should be, seriously, no bullshit, at the lower control point. I should be fucking Forrest Gump, right? But the problem is, all these fucking idiots are pushing me up to the upper control limit and making me look like a fucking genius. And I am not a smart bloke. I'm telling you now I'm not, right? But everyone's getting dumber.
Yep.
Right? They're getting fucking stupid.
I'm going to take that a step further. I think it's deliberate. I absolutely believe 100% that
What?
we are deliberately being made stupid.
Yeah, we are. We are.
If you look at the way that kids are taught in
are.
school and what they're not taught in
Yep.
school,
Useless.
mate. I've done my wife and I we've done the maths, right? And they spend probably 3 hours a day actually doing anything in school. 3 hours tops a day.
yeah.
My son, who's now going into year 6 in not too long, he can't even do long division yet.
And I could be racist here, and that's appalling given that he's half Chinese.
Exactly
Hey,
right.
what about the point? This is no bullshit. This is a fucking sidetrack of sidetracks. It was the niece's birthday a week or two ago, and I asked her, this is no bullshit. I asked her, what do you want for your birthday, darling? You know what she said to me? She's half Chinese, bear this in mind. You know what she said to me? This is no bullshit. She says, I want a rice cooker. I fucking pissed myself. My half...
She's only like 8, isn't she?
my half...
Well trained son.
Yeah, my half Chinese niece wanted a rice cooker for her birthday. And I said to him, you can't call me racist now. You fucking can't call me racist.
It was the most beautiful
And you know what the
moment
best
ever.
bit was? This is the best bit. He hasn't told you this, right? He's got him learning how to be a small business. He's got him up there making coffees and shit as a business.
So
No
when,
bullshit.
so when you go up there later, they're going to record down how much they've done, and they get paid for what they do.
Yeah.
They do the what do they call it in accounting, where you've got the two
General ledger.
Yeah, basically they're capturing a general ledger of what they're doing, and they have outgoing expenses.
They got to work out if they've made a profit.
And they're going to do all the maths behind it.
That's no bullshit. So she comes out. The niece comes out in an apron.
I hope they take FPOS.
Yeah.
Please tell me it's PayPass.
They have when we go up there, I'll show you. They have a chalkboard with a menu for the day. This is no bullshit. She walks out in an apron, right, and says, "What do you want, Uncle Retro Dan?" And I go, "I want a cappuccino, darling." And she goes, "All right." And she takes it and she goes, "That'll be
does a damn good coffee."
Fucking oath. And she charges you, right?
That's what I'm saying. I hope she's got PayPass.
Yeah.
No, we pay her.
Yeah.
She just records it.
I don't have to pay you.
No. It's just more the mathematics.
So she has to
behind
work out right how much they've made in the day. And I said, "This is beautiful. You cannot call me racist. You've got your half Chinese children running a fucking small business in their home."
Mate, it's the only way they
But
learn. They don't learn shit at school.
I used to make a joke with a nephew. No bullshit. I said, "Listen, if you don't smarten up, you know what's going to happen to you." He goes, "What Uncle Retro Dan?" I said, "I'll tell you what's going to happen to you. Your parents are going to send you back to China, and you're going to work in your uncle's fucking sewing machine factory."
He literally has a sewing machine factory.
He has a sewing machine factory. Oh, no bullshit. I met the uncle.
Hang on. If he's got a sewing machine factory, why are we still waiting on shirts?
Oh yeah, I don't know.
No, they don't. They manufacture sewing machines.
They make sewing machines. And I used to say to him,
"Why aren't we getting like a million shirts?"
This is bullshit, Ray.
I've got an update on that.
I used to say to him, "Well, you'll get sent to the sewing machine factory to make sewing machines. You know why? You got small hands.
Yep.
They can get into the parts really
Hey,
easy."
remind me, he can fix my tap.
Technical issue fixed.
Sweet.
All right, we're back. We had a problem.
I'm 13.
Yeah, that problem just involved me just making lunch.
Yes, that's right.
There was a problem we allowed to slip through to the
That's
keeper.
right. So let's move on to. I get your impression finally of what that Netflix documentary was for you, because you heard my perspective.
Oh,
of
look,
it.
I thought it was hot and cold. I don't like. There were so many parts of it I didn't like, but there were a couple of eye-opening bits. The hand scanner.
Yep.
Oh, that was actually quite good, because that's something that has been a pivotal point in his talks all these years about that hand scanner. I think he was led a lot. Like, I think this Jeremy guy led him, and especially when we get into the Rogan podcast.
We'll get on that now.
That was points where
odd.
So we're doing the Rogan.
So you're cool with what I said about the Netflix series?
Oh, I'm dead on with you.
Okay.
It was hot and cold. There were a couple of good points in there. I think there was a lot unsaid, but I also think it was like a fucking Avengers movie.
Yes.
We're gonna see part
Weird.
2. We're gonna see part 2. There was so much there. It was.
Did you have anything to add about that?
I just really disliked the documentary. I fell asleep twice watching it.
It was odd.
I actually had to watch it 3 times just to get to the end because I couldn't handle it. It was just.
There were so many things in it. There were a couple of good points. There were a lot more bad points.
There was a lot of things that were staged. There was a lot of sensationalization, if there's a word like that, to describe that documentary. It was very, very off. It did nothing for his story, did nothing to elaborate.
Did nothing for his credibility.
Absolutely. In fact, probably damaged it, I think. And so, flash forward to the Joe Rogan podcast, which I think was before the airing, or at least the uploading of the documentary.
The documentary's been around for a while, but in my case, I listened to Joe Rogan before I knew about the documentary.
Same here. That's why.
See, I'm the opposite. I did the documentary and then the podcast.
Okay, that's why I thought the Netflix series was after. I'd watched the Rogan podcast before. So Joe Rogan, obviously one of the biggest podcasts in the world. He had Bob Lazar on, and he also had the director, who I keep forgetting his name. Jeremy, whatever his name is, sitting alongside him. And basically, Rogan's a huge UFO fan, or at least the idea of it, and he's a big Bob Lazar fan. But that podcast was fucking weird, right? Firstly, Bob Lazar claimed he had a migraine when he was doing the podcast. I believe him, but he was clearly in distress.
I don't know about a migraine, because if I had a migraine, I wouldn't be on the podcast,
look,
mate.
Jason and I both have discussed this. We both suffer migraines. When I've got a migraine, all I fucking want is a dark room and quiet. The last thing I want to be doing is sitting in a well-lit studio with noise. It's a fucking podcast. If I had rang you guys and said, "Oh, look, guys, I can't get up here till this afternoon. I've got a headache." No problems.
Joe
Done.
would be like, "Yep, fair enough. We'll
Joe
reschedule."
would be the exact same. Reschedule. Okay, yes, you had to fly him there. Okay, but Put him up in the hotel for an extra night.
it
Let
was
him clear.
weird.
That was not a migraine. There was something else.
There was
going
something
on
else there. He almost looked like he was having a stroke. I'm not being funny. Like, it was weird.
Or maybe he had the precursor to a migraine. Like, I get that, so I start stuttering, like, usually a few hours before I'm going to get a migraine.
there. Is that your tell, is it?
That's my tell. Yeah, so it fucks me up big
Oh,
time.
mine just fucking wiped me out.
Yeah, it was weird. It was just odd, the whole thing. But what I found very strange about it was, and again, I don't know the behaviour of Bob Lazar when he has a migraine. I don't know the behaviour of people that do get migraines because I don't personally, touch wood. But for a person that's told a story consistently for 30 years, he completely he was a shut-in on that podcast. He didn't elaborate on anything. He didn't want to talk about anything unless it was really poked and prodded. He was really poked and prodded. And the director was the guy that was leading the conversation, which I thought was very odd, right? And I know he was there to promote his work, which was shit, I got to say.
I think the only reason Bob went on that podcast is because of the promotion of said
That's all it was.
documentary. He wouldn't have done it otherwise.
No.
I've got to sit down. I'm kind of annoyed I didn't get a chance to do it yesterday. I want to see the Larry King one.
I haven't seen that.
They do one with Larry King. I think that'd be interesting to see. So,
His behaviour on that, yeah.
yes, there's got to be something to be able to tell. Because, I mean, his behaviour in any other thing I've seen him from the 80s and 90s was nothing
No,
like.
he was
Absolutely nothing.
he elaborated on everything to the nth degree. On the Rogan podcast,
He didn't touch it.
He didn't touch shit, and that really blows my mind because you would have thought in situations where he was doing interviews with what's his name, Richard Knapp, the guy that was
The original guy.
the original
George.
guy,
Yeah.
George Knapp. Sorry,
George, yeah.
he was so forthcoming with the information. Yes, he was a lot younger back in those days, and maybe he didn't know what he was in for because he hadn't experienced all the things that had happened to him over the next years that were going to come to him. But the point is that he was a complete shut-in on the Rogan podcast, and it was at one point that Rogan even said, well, listen, this is an opportunity to tell your story and actually
Clear the air.
and get rid of some of this bullshit that's hanging over your head, like that your records were wiped when you were a graduate of MIT and Caltech, that you had this hand scanner, which has now been substantiated, that you actually did this documentary. The documentary was shit, but the documentary did actually do one good thing, and they actually did substantiate his work colleague who he claimed worked with him at S4 in Area 51. They actually did substantiate that. Yep. That's the only good thing about that documentary, even though the way they did it was poorly executed. They should never have had that guy over a fucking mobile phone, microphone, and then he said, he won't come forth because he doesn't want to talk.
Yeah.
Right, but he could have elaborated on that. And I was really surprised that a guy that's been so vocal for 30-something years suddenly wasn't talking. Mm-hmm. And I don't know...
There was something wrong.
Something was really wrong. I don't know if somebody... Conspiracy theories. If someone said to him, listen here, you're going on a very large podcast. It's got a huge audience of millions of people. You might want to think about what you're talking about, Bob.
And just make sure that you stick to our agreed upon
Stick to your little
terms.
Exactly. Stick to the agreement that we had, Bob.
Otherwise, you may.
Do you remember? Do you remember the agreement that we had, Bob? Do you remember what it is? Again, I'm being the skeptic here, right? I'm being the guy that would ask him. The very first question I'd ask him is, "How is it that you're still walking on the earth?" Right? When a lot of other people have disappeared.
Well, maybe not walking on the earth, but how the fuck are you not in a penitentiary right now?
That's what I'm saying. Why is it that you're free? How is it?
If
that
they
you're
wanted
free?
to get rid of him, they just lock him up.
That's what I'm saying. Well, no, I don't even think they'd do that.
Well, they could.
No, I don't think they would.
No, they've got the reasoning for it. He was illegally trespassing on federal property. He was involved in all sorts of shenanigans with brothels and whatnot. They could have totally done him in.
Dude, the guy could have been. He drives a car, right? He could have had an accident, quote unquote.
I wonder if he drives one of those. I think he probably wouldn't be driving one of those fancy drive-by-wire cars anymore, would he?
What did you find? You found something?
Look, I'm on YouTube at the moment. I'm just looking at comments on the podcast.
The Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, if you ever feel useless, remember there was a third person in this podcast. Imagine if Barry was the guest instead of Jeremy. I'm only 15 minutes into the podcast, and it's already more informative than the documentary.
Yeah. That documentary, I'm telling you now, that was the worst thing that Bob Lazar could have done. And I think maybe he probably realizes it, to be honest. That director did no favors for him at all.
It just was poorly directed.
No.
It was poorly constructed. It was poorly
Here's
thought through.
another comment from you. YouTube user, you posted 4 days ago. Jeremy is the perfect example of people... Sorry. Jeremy is the perfect example of people really don't listen, but just wait for their turn to speak.
Yeah.
You know what? When I watched the Joe Rogan podcast, no bullshit, he wouldn't shut up. In fact, he would talk over Bob Lazar, and at one point Rogan said, "No, listen, I want Bob Lazar to answer. I want him to give his opinion on it." Because this guy, I'm telling you now, he's out to make a name for himself.
He's out to make money.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a fuck about Bob Lazar, and he fucked him.
Yeah,
I think that's really what it comes down to.
Here you go. At the 2 hours, 11 minutes, 26 mark, Joe had enough of Jeremy Corbell's annoying interruptions.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
He interrupts Joe Rogan more than this fuckwit next to me, Jason Relaxation, interrupts me and fucks me up with my line of thinking. And he did interrupt him a lot.
Would be cool to see Elon Musk, Bob Lazar, and Neil deGrasse Tyson on a podcast together.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
That would be... I'm not so fussed on Elon Musk, but the deGrasse and Lazar would be interesting.
that'd be interesting. Can you just imagine the questions he'd be asked?
That'd just be mental. Sorry, we're all stuck in looking at comments on YouTube at the moment.
I'm trying to find the example I've got. I've got one last question for you too, by the way.
But yeah, look, there was something wrong.
For me, it wouldn't have been a migraine, but
no,
yeah.
definitely wouldn't have been.
Maybe a
Here's
precursor.
question. So, are you a believer or are you a skeptic?
I'm an absolute believer.
He's a huge believer.
Oh, well, he was part of SETI.
I'm a believer too, because I think it would be very unlikely, given how much insignificant we are in the grand scheme of things.
We are fucking insignificant.
right. That we're not alone.
The size
you know,
of
like-
the universe, there is no way there's only one planet in the universe with people on it.
That's it. And I mean, one interesting point that Bob did raise when he was talking about the element 115 is here in the Earth, it may not be an abundant material, but on another planet with a different type of sun,
It may be their oil.
maybe it could be as common as fucking timber. Yeah. Right? And that was the very first thing that they came across, which would explain why they're so far in advance of us.
And that was the other point that I liked that was made was, so if this stuff was 30 years ago, what have they got now?
Yeah.
I'm a massive believer. I don't believe the universe this big can only have one planet with life forms on it.
It makes no sense.
It's like believing the Bible.
I found the story. I found the story, Joey Diaz.
I know you were a cult member at one stage there, but...
Cult member? God, no.
I found the story Joey Diaz was talking about.
Yes.
It's basically saying, it starts off, last May, a YouTube user in North Bergen, I was thinking of the area of New York, it's North Bergen, posted a 6-minute video with creepy howling noises under a cloudless sky. It's not the first report of the unexplained in North Bergen. The city may seem like a humble suburb wedged between Weehawken and Fairview. Now, if anyone living in New York's about to crucify me, shout out to New York, awesome city.
Hey, tell us if you can help us narrow down where the fuck that is.
I don't know where that shit
and
is.
do you have footage?
But it's it is actually the UFO capital of New Jersey.
Okay.
Right? The community's alien mythos dates to a famous 1975 tale of a spacecraft landing in North Hudson County Park across the street from the Stonehenge, a circular apartment tower built in 1968. It goes on and on and on. During the 1975 Stonehenge incident, witnesses in the tower and on the ground described strange lights glowing in the park. It was the first case investigated by the late UFO researcher and author Bob Hopkins, and it goes on to basically say that this shit landed in a park, and the beings came out and did take soil samples and then fuck off. I'm being very, very broad with this article.
Why would they take a soil sample?
They don't know, man.
It keeps going on. 115.
Maybe they're
There's a
cleaning up dog
building
shit.
in North Hudson Park. It's been ground zero for UFO sightings for years. I remember back when the original story came out, says somebody that lives there, the park was filled with news trucks. One of our friends, as a prank, wrapped himself in tinfoil.
That's beautiful.
So this is real, man. That's real. And so at the end of the day, look, I believe there's something out there. I believe that the Rogan podcast, when he was on there. This is Bob Lazar. He was compromised. I really do believe he was compromised.
There was
something wasn't right. The director was just he was just an annoying little prick who kept interrupting what Bob Lazar had to say. But Bob Lazar looked like he was, you know what? He looked like a guy that wasn't suffering from a migraine. He looked like a guy that had a death threat. No bullshit.
He looks like a guy that had literally just been told just before getting onto the podgen. He had a random phone call from a random blank number that said, Bob, you're not allowed to say shit, mate.
Yep, that's what I think. And he was so compromised. It wasn't funny.
I'm going to go home tonight and watch the Larry King one, so we'll have to do an update because I really want to see his reaction. Actually, I might even watch it whilst we're upstairs.
Yes. Now listen, you've got something else that you want to reveal that you told me about yesterday.
No, I wasn't revealing. It was just showing that.
Oh, I never knew about this, man.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
So one of my start in the old UFO skeptics wanting to know more about them was a crash where I grew up. In 1974 in Greenbank in Queensland.
Dun, 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 dun.
Dun, dun, to the point where the guy, his name was Robert Pilnick, I think it was, or something along those lines, actually got a piece of the UFO,
craft.
Of the
Wow.
craft, yeah. It was never reported as a UFO. It was reported as a unidentified object, and they got part of the honeycomb structure from it, but they could never prove.
Isn't that funny? Because Bob Lazar commented on the only thing that he thought was recognizable in the craft was the honeycomb. Basically, what do you call that? Like the manhole cover.
Yeah,
that's the only piece of the craft that I thought was recognizable to a human. But yeah, funny that you mentioned honeycomb was the only thing that you
I'd
found.
never heard of this incident in Brisbane. Or near Brisbane.
Yeah, 1974, so 2 years before I was born. It's not very well...
No.
Look, I only found out... I was in primary school, was going through the library, it was on a UFO book. I was in year 7. And I remember grabbing this book out and reading it. Fuck, Greenbank. And, trying to find out. I can never find out where it was.
It sounds like a blog that we need to do. We need to go up there and have a bit of an investigation.
I tell you, it reminds me.
Should we make a documentary?
It reminds me.
That's it. It's referred to as the not so alien honeycomb. Is the report about it? Doesn't really say much. UFO explosion near Greenbank, Queensland. That's
I love it how they can travel halfway across the universe and then fucking blow up.
Well, you know what? I think they're as vulnerable as we are in a lot of ways. I think they probably have awesome, way more advanced technology than we do, and I don't think they're indestructible. I think at the end of the day, they're definitely indestructible to us, but to the elements, to nature, to all sorts of other factors.
War of the Worlds,
they can
germs.
There's things that they're not godlike. I don't think. At the end of the day,
they've obviously come across technologies, or they're some ways more advanced than we are. But if you look at our trajectory in terms of technology, we're fucking catching up pretty quick.
No,
fucking technology's out of hand.
No, I don't think we are, man.
No. If you're talking the span of the universe, you can't tell me we're less than 1,000 years away from having that tech. 1,000 years in space time. You know what the problem will be? You know what the problem will be? We won't be here. No, we won't be.
No. The human race won't be.
Yeah, but I'm talking about it's taken us 10 million years to get to where we are now. From being monkeys to fucking here. And within 1,000 years, we'll go to being intergalactic.
Do you know why technology is ramping up as quickly as it is? You want to hear the wacky theory on this shit? This is a fucking bit of a homework assignment for you. I've got 2 for you before we go, because I need to bust for a piss.
I've probably got a 3rd for you.
I'm done, right? You know what the first one is? The reason why technology is increasing so rapidly is because in the 60s they developed the transistor. Right, the microprocessor came in the 70s, but that's founded on the transistor. Guess where that fucking came from? The Roswell crash. Dun, dun. So ever since the Roswell crash came, you think about the decades that have come since then. Radically, every decade we've had some major advancements in technology, right?
Oh, we
so
it's gone from decades. Like when we grew up, it was every 3, maybe 5 years. We got a new iteration of something. Now it's yearly to 6 monthly that we're getting. You're just starting, like we were talking about 4K TVs earlier. Okay, I've just got a 4K TV.
Remember
I'm starting to enjoy it. I'm starting to get content, not much, Now 8K's out there.
Yep.
Remember
12K's
when-
in the thoughts.
Remember when we were kids? TVs were TVs, man. They didn't fucking change. They got maybe bigger, but they were still CRTs. They still were like big fat things. They
I still had to get up and the
their
old man fucking
resolution.
poked me and said, "Go change the channel."
That's right. Resolution was the resolution. All you gave a fuck was
And
color, right?
And I mean,
That's
the
it.
resolution was what?
480.
CRTs were the same to what? Early 2000s?
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
really,
Yep.
you know, if-
So technology has. I mean, look at your mobile phone. That's got more power in it than the IBM 360, which was a mainframe, ginormous supercomputer in the 60s, right? That nobody had,
Mate, it's
right?
got
That
more-
filled up a room.
This has got more power than
This
our
has got more-
286s have.
Well, this had
not only that,
486s.
so a calculator watch.
Yeah.
The old Casio calculator watch.
He's got one.
more
got
computer
one.
more computer power in that than what we sent Apollo 11 to the moon with.
Yep.
Yep.
That's crazy
So
shit.
here's the thing. Where did that come from?
And we're just getting dumber. We're getting more.
You know why? Because we rely on our technology more and more. And I make fun at the young kids out there, the millennials. I do make fun at
I make
them,
fun of them, but I
right?
feel sorry for them.
But I
'cause they're
feel
in
sorry
that
for them because you
worm.
know what's going to happen to them. I'm really sorry. At some point, I say this now, and I won't be here to see it, right? But something's going to turn the Wi-Fi off, and it ain't coming back on, and then you're fucked, right?
How do I cook?
No, I'm being serious. And I'm going to leave you with one last thing. You know why I say this? Firstly, I think the rapid expansion of technology has come from some kind of discovery from alien technology. Maybe it was Roswell, maybe it wasn't.
Or maybe
maybe it was Bob Lazar's fucking spaceship that he was reverse
it's
engineering.
probably not
why do
one.
you reverse engineer spaceships? You know why you want to capture technology and use it. That's what you want to do. That is the only reason why you reverse engineer
Well,
something.
whoever figures that
right?
out wins, right?
That's right.
That's the
so
thing.
the Americans figure it out. Guess who wins? They do, right? But if you reverse engineer technology that you don't have, you know what you do? You learn from it, you study it, and then you use it, right? They even did that shit in Robotech. That's something that
That's
I
a
learned
rabbit
today
hole.
too. That's a fucking rabbit hole because Harmony Gold have won the rights to that and extended it for another beyond 2021. That means Robotech's fucked, but I won't talk about Robotech today. But they did that in Robotech.
Shout out to Pedro.
Shout out to Pedro.
suppressive
That
personality.
suppressive personality, that little fuck, I almost booked him today too because he was so upset by that news that I gave him. But the point
He's
is,
had an upsetting
the
couple of
technology
weeks, really,
might have
hasn't he?
come that we have today come from somewhere, right?
It had to have come from somewhere.
And I think it's come from something out of this world. Da-dam.
It wouldn't surprise me. But then you got there's the other question that never really gets. I mean, so we talk about Area 51, we talk about the Americans and the space and the UFOs. What about Russia? That's very quiet in the whole UFO front. There's hardly anything
Well,
reported.
there's some
there.
weird shit that happens in the Siberian
Oh,
forest.
there's weird stuff that
Right.
happens, but that's
And the Siberian wilderness and desert and all the rest of it, there's some weird shit that happens there. They're very quiet, but maybe they don't have the technology or the will or the want to talk about
Well, going
it.
back to that
Right.
original conversation, every decade they pull it out and they go, do we have the tech? No, we don't. Put it back in a vault.
Yep. That's what I mean. They probably have got something hidden away, just like the Americans have, but maybe they haven't got the means to reverse engineer it. If you don't have the tools to deconstruct something, that was one of the things Bob Lazar actually said.
We didn't have
They didn't have the tools to deconstruct it. They found the metal and the alloy or whatever it was that they've never seen before, and everything they threw at it, nothing. And you know what? It's kind of like apes, right? You know when apes get the shits and they throw things at each other and all
Shit.
that? They literally throw shit at it. That's what fucking humans are.
That was
they,
one-
they literally saw that the alien spacecraft in a hangar somewhere that they've excavated or they've found, and they've basically hit it and smashed at it with rocks like chimps would. Like in Space Odyssey 2001 where they find the monolith and the apes hit it with bones and rocks and shit. That's what humans did with this fucking spacecraft.
and
that-
they're probably still doing it.
and still doing it. And even though the technology is better than it was back in the 80s, we still haven't got the means to fully understand it or fully exploit it, right? But a lot of the things that Bob Lazar said was that when they went and saw spacecraft flying in Area 51, that was shit that we have created. There's also theories that, you know, the stealth bombers and all the stuff that came in the 2000s or the late 90s, that's fucking from alien
Stealth
technology.
technology's meant to
That's
be, yeah.
from alien technology, they believe. And it looks like it's alien technology.
Well, it's
How
funny
is
that
it
no
you
other
get-
no other country on the planet has come up with something similar.
No. And why does it look so different from fucking normal aircraft? Why is it so different? I'm not a smart bloke, but to me it sounds like they found something, and yeah, it's not.
But they couldn't figure out
No.
like the actual
No.
engine technology.
But
No, but they've looked at everything.
But they
else.
looked at everything else,
yeah.
right? And that's what I mean.
I'm sure that's something they're
That's what I mean.
looking
And
into regularly.
that's what I mean. And they reckon the microprocessor transistors, which get wedged onto a silicon die, which is a microprocessor chip, They found that in the Roswell crash. Look that shit up. Dun, dun. And I'm going to give you another one, another little rabbit hole, because I got to piss bad, right? And I'm
Is this
almost
to do
done
with the
this.
yellow note in your pocket?
No, I actually wrote down the guy's name, Shermer, who's a professional skeptic,
Oh, yep.
because I knew I wanted to talk about Bob Lazar, and if I wanted to pick him to pieces, I'd ask him the question, and Shermer would have asked that, right? Because he's a skeptic.
Yep.
But my latest rabbit hole, we talked about the Russians. Guess what I watched, and I couldn't stop watching it. I binged it. Chernobyl.
Oh, I've heard
Oh, I
about
haven't
it.
seen that yet.
Is it good?
Oh, fucking fuck! It's awesome.
That's on Netflix, isn't it?
No, it was on Foxtel. Is how I watched it.
Oh,
No, it's
I
on
sh-
Netflix too
I
now.
think it's
Is
on
it?
Netflix.
It's either
yeah.
Netflix or Stan. I can't remember which
Dude,
one. Yeah.
I'm telling you now. That is fucking bullshit. And that's a rabbit hole you can't get out of either.
The whole Chernobyl thing.
The whole
Yeah.
thing, man.
Have you seen the tourist figures for Chernobyl
It's
recently?
huge.
They've gone through the
But
roof. You can do
they're-
tours.
They're playing with fire. They reckon that it is still so highly radioactive. That's
Well, they
the,
still haven't finished the dome, have they?
they have. They finished it in 2017.
But it's still radioactive.
It's
as fuck.
still
Have they
radioactive.
moved it over?
They have. What they reckon they've done is they've built. At the end of the documentary, it says that the construction of the dome over the plant was completed in 2017, but it's only good for 100 years. After that, the
It
radiation,
decays, yeah.
the radiation will seep through
I
it.
watched a doco on building that thing.
Mm-hmm.
That is an
But
impressive.
you think that's fucked? Friggin' Fukushima in Japan's worse than that. They've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these mega vats of toxic water that they're storing, but those are starting to decay already because of the radiation.
Well, then you go, what's that island? What's that island they're talking about at the moment where they used to do all the atoll in the middle of the
yeah,
ocean?
in the middle of fucking nowhere. Yeah,
Yeah, the where they did all their testing is starting to leak.
But Chernobyl was the worst, right? Because it blew up big time. Not
Yeah.
even a little bit. It fucking blew
Well,
up.
it put nuclear
They
waste-
completely lost it, right?
Yeah.
And so watch the documentary or the mini series, whatever you want to call it. It's more of a mini.
I can't wait to see that.
It is 100% unfucking believable, right? And I don't know enough about power plants and nuclear power plants to even really talk about it, but I know enough based on what they showed to say that they lost complete control of this thing, and every blade of grass, every toy, every animal, everything that they fucking had near that area of Chernobyl was fucking fucked. Like the radioactive fucked. And to the point where they had a team of people go in and kill animals. Any animal that they found running around the streets of the, I think it was Pripyat. I'm not
Pripyat.
pronouncing it right.
It's something like that.
Pripyat. That town, which was near the nuclear power plant, they went in after the fact, and even those people would be fucked because they didn't wear much radiation suits, and even if they had them back then, the radiation was so bad it would have seeped through everything. They went in and they had soldiers or snipers or whatever it was, and anything that moved, they fucking killed it. No bullshit, and they show it on this show. And they reckon that place, that Pripyat, is fucked for 50,000 years. Think about that shit,
The
right?
pictures are amazing.
I wouldn't go there. Or actually, I probably could because I've been radiated anyway, so who gives a fuck?
Yeah,
I could probably.
you know what? You'd be the most radioactive
You know what?
thing there.
I should probably go there and fucking sit on the swings and bask in the ridiculous
I want to
craziness
be a
of it.
photographer that takes that picture.
I just sit on the swings, man. They can't. I've fucking already been radiated. They can't kill me. I just fucking do it. But what I'm saying is, I can remember as a kid. I'll leave you with this. This blows my fucking mind. I was watching this show, right? And I remember as a young kid, Dad, who worked in the food industry, had a massive project, right, that he had to work on. And he went to Singapore many times over it. They had to change their food sources, their raw material sources, because they used to get shit from Europe. Not fucking Russia, not from Chernobyl, hundreds of kilometres away from the plant. They had to change supply of certain raw materials for their food products because it was contaminated with radiation. Dun-dun.
Well, Russia didn't report it for what, 3 days, wasn't it? 3 days.
They-
the world was going. The world's going. Hello, we're seeing a nuclear cloud.
It was longer than that, and it was actually picked up by the French.
Yeah, and they were saying there's a nuclear
The French
cloud.
go, hey, radiation levels in fucking Paris are out of control. What's going on over there? And the Russians went, oh, yeah, we've got a bit of a problem. Right? But they didn't ask for any help.
It's okay.
You watch the documentary about how fucking ridiculous. They actually had people wear lead aprons and gas masks go up onto the roof of the reactor, no bullshit, with fucking shovels and shovel the silicon or whatever they call it, the graphite, and throw it over the edge into the reactor core, which was exposed. They looked down into the reactor core and it was wide open, right? And they threw bits and pieces over the roof into the reactor core, and they only had 90 seconds to do it because that was the maximum amount of time before they were cooked and get disorientated and fucking die. Oh, it's insane when you watch this thing. It's a rabbit hole, and I can't get out of it now because I want to do more Googling and more research on this shit. Because you're right, because now they've opened up the town or parts of it where people are going there.
There's little towns. There's people who've never moved.
No, well, they go over it where they go into these remote places there, the Priyat, and they say, you've got to go. And they're like, no, this is my home. Well, you got to go. And they're like, well, you know what? We've been under the rule of the Soviets. We were in the war. We've had guns put in our faces. There's nothing you can do to make us leave. We're going to stay in our homes.
We're done.
Oh, fuck, it's unbelievable. That's a rabbit hole that you need to research. Because I'm telling you now, Chernobyl is huge, man. I was watching this series and I couldn't stop watching it, dude. I couldn't stop. It was unfucking... I'm going to watch it again because it's unbelievable. And I'll tell you what, the actors they picked for it, a lot of them are from Game of Thrones. No bullshit. And a lot of these actors they picked, they're English actors. They look this almost lifelike to the real people that were involved in it, because they show the real people that were involved in the that were running the plant at the time, the supervisors and the technical people. They look like their counterparts, the actors. It's bullshit, man. I'll leave you with that. I'm sorry, Mrs. Rocket Russell, because I fucked him. I think he's got in a rabbit hole. Have we said everything we wanted to say about...
Yep, we're waiting for the thing. But the only thing we missed was the F-18 pilot. What did you think about him?
I don't know enough about it to comment on it, to be honest. They talk about what's the
what's his
the
name?
guy that's he's come out, like the captain
he
or whatever.
Didn't come out. I mean, the US government has put him out as the front man.
I saw.
So
flying
apparently,
an F-18,
was it 2005 or was it 2004? The US government had a fleet, one of their fleet of ships, for 80 days, I believe it was, tracking a UAP. To the point where they sent 2 F-18s up to have a look.
Yeah.
And have you seen the footage?
I have, where it just bounces around and they've got this thing's fucking...
But see, all this stuff, I mean, this really was like at its height in the 80s, the early 80s. And I told the story I got it wrong. I thought it was 1983. I think it's 1981, where in my neighbourhood where I live, where my parents live, people witnessed crazy shit in the sky.
Oh, there's
not just one person, multiple people. And I told the story on a very early podcast we did, and we took a photo, and there were weird images on the photo.
Right, you sent it to me.
And there's this crazy guy we used to know, and he fucking looked at it and went, "Okay, I've never seen them in that formation before." But he said, "This shit, I can't refute it. I can't deny it." But originally he said, "I think it's bullshit," right? But he gave it some people that he knew, and he went over it and went, "Fuck, we can't explain this." But everybody in the neighbourhood, which back then was very remote, by the way, we saw something on that day. And I got it wrong.
And by remote, it's fucking really remote.
It's really it's still remote today, man. So back in the 80s, it was fucking really remote. I thought originally it was 83. I think it's more like 81. But it was early 80s when this happened on this day. But it wasn't just our town. It was a whole series of other towns that we saw shit. And it reminds me of that story I told you, I just said about North Bergen in New York, where they saw something land. We never saw that. We never saw something land. But they saw something land and fuck off. That kind of crazy shit. And if one person said it...
guys on New Jersey Turnpike, 10 minutes, they sat there watching them.
Yep.
And there was a lot of people.
Yep. So if one person says it's bullshit, if two people say they saw it, that's bullshit. But if a whole group of people see it, then there's got to be something to it. Now, whether it's a UFO, who fucking knows? But it's weird shit, right? But at the end of the day, I think there's some legitimate things that Bob Lazar has said.
I think there's legitimate.
I think he was heavily compromised by the Rogan podcast.
As he said in his thing, the briefings that are given, each person has their own bit of information, so they and he's that man. He's,
He's the guy. He's the center. And if you want to go down the rabbit hole of UFO shit, you start with Bob Lazar. That's what I think. You start with him.
Tyson's not bad either. Tyson deGrasse,
he's pretty good on it. Yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
That's it. Yeah,
yeah.
I knew
he's
part of his name.
Yeah, and he's very even tempered. He's very consistent with what he says. And what my problem with Bob Lazar is, if I have to nitpick, if I want to be that skeptic, which I'm not, he's a little all over the place at the moment. That's my two cents.
Yeah, I think
He's
been
something's going on, right? But that's all I want to end it with. Have you guys said everything you wanted to say?
Let's rock and roll. I'm hungry.
We're all hungry. Got to piss.
Same here. I've got to piss badly.
Say hello to your mum for us.
That's right.
Say hello to your mum for me.
We're done. Thank you, Rocket Russell, for being in.
Thanks for having me again.
Thank you, Jason Relaxation, for being you. Don't go with changing. This has been Invert the Why episode 12.1.5, whatever it is. I'm sorry I read it about UFOs and Bob Lazar. I can't help it. I've been fascinated by it since 1989. It's a rabbit hole I can't get out of, like everything else. Like I secretly want to be abducted by aliens so they can stick an anal probe up my ass and wonder what that feels like. And no one can judge me for being so weird and kinky over it.
It's out of space, so it's a different
It's out of space, so if you stick things up your ass, it's okay. That's what they fucking told me. The aliens, because they speak to me every night, because they're and you know what else is fascinating about this podcast? That Rocket Russell never once spoke about Formula One, and I never asked him about Formula One. And you know what else? I didn't do any Alex Jones voices, but I'm going to now, you fucks, because in an imagine aliens are going to come and they're going to visit us because we got news on Infowars.com. And you know what you can do, you fucking sexy motherfuckers, you intergalactical motherfuckers? You know what you can do. We'll talk about more retro and bullshit on the next podcast, but until then, you can roll it, buggies!